Hi everyone, today we are starting ascending tracts. So first of all, what exactly is a tract? If you can recall, so we studied about white matter and I told you that there are different arrangement of white matter. If your white matter extends cephalocaudally, that's a tract. If it extends anteroposteriorly, that's an association fiber. And if it extends from right to left, from one cerebral hemisphere to the other, that is a commissure fiber. So recall that information and you realize that yes, that this is exactly the tracts we're talking about. So it's basically a white matter that extends cephalocaudally. Now, what is definition of a white matter? It's basically a bundle of axons that are present in central nervous system. I told you that bundle of axons, that's an incomplete definition. You need to attach the word central nervous system with it in order to clarify the location, because you will find white matter and gray matter only in the central nervous system, not in the peripheral nervous system. So again, what are tracts? It is basically the white matter that extends cephalocaudally, and white matter is the bundle of axons that's found in the central nervous system. So this is the way you're going to take your definition, starting from here till there. So white matter that extends cephalocaudally, that's tracts. White matter that extends anteroposteriorly, that's association fiber, and white matter that extends from right to left, that's commissure fibers. Now, what are receptors? The receptors are basically biological transducers. They are capable of converting energy of stimulus into electrochemical energy of action potential. So, transducers are basically those components which can convert one type of energy into another type of energy. So, these convert energy of stimulus into the action potential energy, which is the electrochemical energy. Now, what happens exactly is that receptors take up the information, so they convert the energy from stimulus to the energy of electrochemical energy of action potential, and that information is taken up by the sensory neurons, and where the ascending tracts, they take this information to the higher centers of the brain, so higher brain centers, and then where the descending tracts, this information is going to come down to the motor neurons, and then ultimately to the effector organs, and whatever effect is needed, that will be produced. Now, before diving deep into the descending tracts, it's very important for you to know the structure of spinal cord, and it should be in your fingertips. So, spinal cord, the gray matter is residing on the inner surface, like inner side, right? And the outer area that is covered by your white matter. So, gray matter, it has a posterior gray horn, an intermediate or lateral gray horn, and an anterior gray horn, right? So, anterior gray horn, intermediate or lateral gray horn, and a posterior gray horn. So horn word is used for the gray matter. And for white matter, you're going to use the word columns or funiculus. So similarly, you have anterior white column, a lateral white column, and a dorsal white column or posterior white column, right? Or funiculus. Now you need to know that these are the roots. These are the roots. This is ventral motor root and this is dorsal sensory root. So dorsal root also has a ganglion. So that's the dorsal root ganglion, right? So cell body resides outside the spinal cord. So this is dorsal sensory root. So any, for example, if this is your receptor organ, so any information that's coming from the receptor, it's going to come here and it's going to ultimately go where the dorsal root ganglion inside your spinal cord, where the dorsal sensory root. So any information that's coming, it's going to go to the dorsal sensory root, right? So this is your dorsal sensory root. So you'll know any information that's coming, it's going to go to the dorsal sensory root. This is the ventral motor root, right? Now the ventral motor root and the dorsal sensory root, they're going to merge and they're going to form the trunk of the spinal cord. So trunk of the spinal cord is formed. Now this trunk of spinal cord, it further divides into a posterior rami and an anterior rami, a ventral ramus and a dorsal ramus. So ventral ramus and dorsal ramus. So how does this go about? First of all, you have a root, then you have a spinal trunk, and then you have rami again. So you have two roots, they merge, they form spinal trunk, then they form rami. So ventral is the motor root, dorsal is the sensory root. It also has a dorsal root ganglions. Any information that's coming from the receptors is going to go to the dorsal root ganglion and ultimately where the dorsal sensory root into the spinal cord, the gray matter of the spinal cord, right? And then this merges and forms spinal nerve, trunk of spinal nerve, and that divides into a dorsal ramus and a ventral ramus, right? Ventral ramus, it innervates the structures. Since it's the ventral ramus, it's going to innervate the structures in the anterolateral part of the body, in the anterolateral part of your body. And when you talk about a dorsal ramus, it's going to innervate the structures in the back of your body. For example, skin and the muscles of the back of your body, right? So that's the dorsal ramus. Another very important thing to notice is that now your dorsal sensory root is carrying only the sensory nerve fiber, and the ventral motor root is carrying only the motor nerve fiber, right? But the spinal trunk, the trunk of the spinal nerve, is carrying a mixture of both the sensory and the motor nerve fibers. And same goes with the rami, that they are carrying both the sensory and the sensory and the motor, right? So this brings us to the conclusion that the roots, they're pure. They have the dorsal root is going to carry sensory nerve fibers, and the ventral root is going to carry the motor nerve fibers. So that needs to be on your fingertips, and you can learn this with the help of that any receptors that are bringing in the information is going to go where the dorsal root ganglion into the dorsal sensory root and then to the spinal cord. Trunk has a mixture of both sensory and motor, and the rami also have a mixture of both sensory and motor. Now this is clear. Now another very important piece of information, yes, that is the information that should be on your fingertips once again. So this is like a complete overview. Your dorsal column, it has just the ascending tracts. Your lateral column, it has ascending and descending both of the tracts. And same goes with your anterior, it has ascending and descending both the tracts. Now, when you talk about lateral and anterior, so we normally tend to group them together, anterolateral. Why? Because these are primitive, these are old, they were formed ages back. Dorsal column or funiculus, this is most modern, like this is the most latest or recent, and even by recent we mean at least a ton of million years ago, right? So like a bunch of million years ago. So these are dorsal ones are modern, they're recent, and anterolateral they are primitive. Right? Now, what do I mean by that? That you can imagine dorsal column being a highway, which is very modern and it has all sorts of traffic going, all not exactly all sorts, but it has not all sorts of traffic, but it has a very fast system. Like there will be like very fast system. And for example, if there's a division, so only through this road the cars that are going in one direction they'll be only going right. You won't have a mixture of everything because this is a highway. You need to be really careful. So it is very fast system with high velocity. And why is it high velocity? Because it is heavily myelinated. So it's a highway which is high velocity because it is highly myelinated. And the other thing about it is it's carrying only the ascending pathways, right? Ascending tracts. So this is about it. And it carries the modern information, the modern sensation. What are the modern sensations? Like fine touches. Fine touch, that's a modern sensation. Then proprioception, the sense that is coming from the locomotor system, if you can recall the definition, that's also a modern sensation, which is a sense of position. And sense of two-point discrimination. For example, if someone touches you at this point and this point, you should be able to distinguish that, yeah, he touched me here as well as here at the same time simultaneously. So sense of two-point discrimination, proprioception, which is the sense of position, and your fine touch. So these are the modern sensations which are done by the dorsal column. So dorsal column, again, it's a highway. It's very high velocity because it's highly myelinated. It's a highway, right? So high velocity because it is highly myelinated and it carries only information that's going in one direction. So ascending tracts it's going to carry. And it's going to take modern senses such as fine touch, proprioception, sense of position, and the sense of two-point discrimination. Now another thing about this is that it is better gradated. That means it has better gradations. It is localized, right? Now moving forward, when you talk about enterolateral, so I'm just grouping them together. Enterolateral, this is primitive. So every sensation that's from olden days which is present, for example, pain, temperature, these are not recent discoveries. These were present even with the first person who was there. He also experienced pain, temperature. So this is a very old sensation, same intimate sensations. That's the reason the generations were able to be carried forward. That's the reason people were intimate and they were reproducing. So these are all very primitive sensations, even tickling, itching, crude touch. One is fine touch. One is very coarse and crude touch, right? So fine touch is, we've already clarified, that's by the dorsal column. And the crude touch is your anterior column sensation. Now this is primitive, therefore it's low myelinated and low velocity system. And the other thing is that it's going to have primitive senses like crude touch, pain, temperature, tickling, itching, and intimate sensation. Another thing, because this is not a highway, this is some very random road, so it's going to have every sort of traffic going here, right? Every, so ascending and descending both, and every sort of traffic, that means a variety of, maybe there's a horse that's also going here, there's a donkey cart also, there's a rickshaw also, there's a car, there's a small car, there's a motorbike, there's an auto rickshaw, everything, right? So it has a variety of sensations because it's a primitive one. So I hope that's clarified. Now let's recall again. You have a dorsal column, funiculus, and you have anterolateral. Anterolateral is more primitive. It's older, so it's low velocity and it's less myelinated. Because it's less myelinated, it is a low velocity system. Now it has a variety of sensations because all sorts of traffic can go here, and it has primitive senses mainly like crude touch, pain, temperature, tickling, itching, and intimate sensation. So crude touch, pain and temperature, tickling and itching, and then intimate sensations. Dorsal is a more modern, so it's a highway. So it's high velocity because it is highly myelinated, and then it has only ascending tracts going in it, and then it has modern sensations such as proprioception, sense of position, fine touch, and then sense of two-point discrimination. So now here we're clear with this. Moving forward, I already remember telling you that your conscious information goes to your cerebral cortex, and any information that's unconscious info that your body doesn't need to deal with like consciously, so that's going to go to your cerebellum. And unconscious information, yes, cerebellum. For now, you need to know that. Now, let's first discuss the more modern system, the dorsal column. The tracts in your descending tracts in the dorsal column. So let's first discuss those. So these are ascending tracts of the dorsal column. So ascending tracts. Tracts, remember, white matter. So these are the ascending tracts of the dorsal column. So let's first discuss that. What was the sense that it was detecting? Fine touch, then also the sense of position, proprioception, and two-point discrimination. So what are the receptors that's going to bring about this information? Mesonous receptors, Pacinian corpuscles, muscle spindles, Golgi tendon organ. These are the receptors. They're going to bring in the information. So these are the receptors, right? They're going to bring in the information. uh, so this is a ganglion, right? This is dorsal root ganglion. Remember, I told you all the sensory information is going to come here. So dorsal root ganglion, every ganglion is going to have a peripheral process which is coming from the receptor, and a central process which is going to the higher centers of the brain, spinal cord and the higher centers of the brain. So the peripheral process is going to bring about the information from the receptors, which are the receptors, mesoners, Pacinian, muscle spindles, and Golgi tendon organ. And then the central process, and here this is your dorsal root ganglion. Then the information is going to go to the dorsal column, right? The dorsal gray horn, dorsal gray horn. Sorry, it's going to go to the dorsal gray horn. From dorsal gray horn, this information is going to go to the dorsal white column, and then it's going to ascend upwards. So this is basically your ascending tract of dorsal column. Now you may be thinking, oh, it's so simple, but wait, there's a lot of information to it as well. First of all, let me clarify one thing, that any information that's coming from here, it's going to first of all go and, for example, this is one level of the spinal cord, right? Then you have the spinal cord here as well, and then there and there, everywhere there'll be sections, right? So information that's coming from the lower part, it's here. The other information that's, so this is going like medially, right? Another information that's coming from an higher part, it's going to be added laterally. Another information that's coming, it's going to be added laterally. Similarly, this goes here as well. The information from the lower part is going medially, and the one that's getting added as we go up, that's added laterally. So lower part of the body, the fibers are medial, and the upper part of the body, the fibers are lateral. I hope I'm making sense what I'm saying. So, for example, if the information that's coming from the foot, that's going to be the most medial. And any fibers that are coming, they'll be added laterally. So, for example, calf will be lateral to that, abdomen will be even lateral to that, then your upper limb will be the most lateral, right? So, for example, a person, God forbid, has developed some sort of disease or some tumor right in the middle. So, what will be affected? His lower limbs will be affected because the fibers are the ascending tracts of your coming from your lower limb. So I hope you can learn this for now, that ascending tracts of dorsal column, they are simultaneously, as you go upwards, they are being added on the lateral part. So dorsal, so they're being added on the lateral side. So medial most are from your lower part of the body. So this was like very like detailed information, but you need to know it. That fibers keep on getting laterally, so that we've established. Now, what happens is that If you talk about, I'm trying to see the first order and second order neuron. Why haven't I mentioned that? But okay, I'll explain that to you as well. That the first order neuron, it originates from dorsal root ganglion and it's coming here and it's going to terminate here. And then the second neuron begins from your dorsal gray horn and it's going to go into the dorsal white column. And from dorsal white column, it's going to ascend further. And all the ones that are going to be added as we go up, they're going to be added laterally. So the medial most is from the lower limb, right? As the central process is going, okay, wait, I think I've made a mistake here. It's probably not going to, okay, wait, it's not going to terminate here. I made a mistake about the first order neuron. I'm really sorry. It's not going to terminate here. Instead, it's directly going to go to the dorsal gray horn and then the dorsal white column, and it's going to go and terminate at the nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus. So that's where the central process of first order ganglion are going to terminate, right? So you have fasciculus gracilis and fascicular cuneatus. This is basically as you go upwards, all the fibers that are being added, the ones that are being added medially, they're fascicular. They're going to form a bundle called fasciculus gracilis, and the ones that are being added laterally, they're going to form a bundle called fasciculus cuneatus. Now you may be confused, what's a fasciculus, and there's one more word. So fasciculus, and there's one more word, but I cannot see if I've written that down. But anyways, as it's gonna come, I'll explain to you. So fasciculus, okay, it's just a bundle for now, right? So this is fasciculus gracilis. So this is bringing all the information that's medially, so from the lower limb, right? So medial bundle from lower limb, that's fasciculus gracilis. Lateral bundle from upper part of the body, that's fasciculus cuneatus. So excuse my mistake that I made here. So your first order neuron, it's coming and it's going to terminate at the, this is the fasciculus, but it's going to terminate at the nucleus, the gracilis nucleus and the cuneatus nucleus. These fibers are arranged in the topographical fashion. This is the dorsal column we're talking about. And as clinical, I've already told you. Now, dorsal column sensations are moving upward, uncrossed ipsilaterally. So they're moving and they're just going upwards and they're moving uncrossed ipsilaterally. What does this mean? For example, if it's coming from the left side, it's going to go to the left dorsal white column, and if it's coming from the right side, it's going to go first to the uh, dorsal right-sided dorsal gray horn and then the dorsal white column of the right side only, and then it's going to ascend further. So it's ipsilateral. So they're moving upwards, uncrossed ipsilaterally, right? And then it's making four bundles. For example, fasciculus gracilis, gracilis, cuneatus, cuneatus. So this is your dorsal column, right? And then these fibers are going to terminate at the level of medulla oblongata. You will have what? You will have the nucleus cuneatus and nucleus gracilis. So this is your nucleus gracilis in the medial and cuneatus laterally. So it's going to terminate there. So where are you going to find your nuclei? They're at the level of the medulla oblongata, right? Nucleus gracilis and cuneatus. That's where this is going to terminate. So once this terminates there, yes, this is what I was talking about, fasciculus and lemniscus. So you might be confused about what is fasciculus and what is lemniscus, but let me first do lemniscus and then I'll tell you. So once it comes, for example, this is your fasciculus, cuneatus, and gracilis. They're coming to the nuclei. Once they come to the nucleus, what happens that they terminate there. Then the second order neurons they begin. These second order neurons, they are going to mix and mingle. So for example, the ones which are from here, these axons are going to go towards the other side here and upwards, and the ones from here also, from the left side they're going to the right side, and from the right side they're going to the left side. So I hope it's making sense whatever I'm doing here. So if you can see, from right side, they're going to the left side. This is the right side. They're going to the left side. And from the left side, they're going to the right side. Right? So this is like a major decussation at the level of the lower part of medulla. So in medulla, we had our nuclei. So the lower part of medulla, there's a major decussation. Now these are the nuclei of the second order neuron. So these were the second order neuron that are decussating. So once this decussation happens, the fibers that are intertwining with each other, which are arising, right? So these second order neurons which are rising and they're intertwining with each other, these are called internal arcuate fibers. So these were crossing over. These are internal arcuate fibers. Now, these internal arcuate fibers, when they're going to the opposite side and they are forming bundles together. These are now known as lemnisci. So this is medial lemniscus. That's the reason why dorsal column ascending tract is also known as dorsal lemniscal system, not medial. I think you would say dorsal or dorsal. This is yes medial lemniscus, but you call it dorsal lemniscal system because it forms medial lemniscus, right? So now, what's the difference between fasciculus and lemniscus? Fasciculus is basically a circular bundle of nerve fibers. What is a lemniscus? Lemniscus is more of a flattened bundle of the nerve fibers. A flattened bundle of nerve fiber is lemniscus, and a circular bundle of nerve fiber is fasciculus. Okay, done. Now moving forward, uh, this information that went up to the where the medial lemniscus, where is it going to go? Before that, let me explain to you a little bit of further anatomy so that you can understand this image much better. So here you have your thalamus. This is your thalamus. These are the thalami, right? Right and left thalami. Then here you can see this is the internal capsule. Internal capsule has a anterior limb and a posterior limb, interior limb and a posterior limb. Then this is your lentiform nucleus, right? This is the external capsule, right? This is the lentiform nucleus. And then here you can see this is the caudate nucleus, which is like a rat which is sitting on this potato, and this is the cheese in the kitchen. This is the salad. Salad is the internal capsule, right? And here you can see internal capsule I've drawn this way. So internal capsule, and this is the cheese, which is your lentiform nucleus, lentiform, or there's some lentils like dal and all that the rat loves to eat. This is the potato caudate nucleus. Sorry, this is the thalamus potato, and these are the caudate nuclei, rat sitting on the cheese and the potato. Right, so caudate nucleus, thalami, lentiform nucleus, and internal capsule. Right, I hope you have understood. Now, what exactly is internal capsule? This is posterior limb, anterior limb. Internal capsule is basically white matter which is pressed between the thalamus and the lentiform nucleus. So there's a lot of white matter which is pressed between the thalamus and the lentiform nucleus. That's basically internal capsule. So this is a definition of internal capsule, that it's white matter which is pressed between thalamus and the lentiform nucleus, right? Now moving forward, you understood this anatomy. Now let's talk about thalamus. Your thalamus has a Y-shaped gray matter. So this is a Y-shaped gray matter in the thalamus. Now further, it has some divisions. This is its medial portion, this is lateral, and this is its sorry, this is its medial, this is lateral, and this is anterior, right? So medial, lateral, and anterior. This is anterior, medial, and lateral. Now the lateral is further divided into a dorsal and a ventral in the front and dorsal at the back. So this is lateral, ventral, and dorsal, right? Ventral in the front and dorsal at the back. Now that ventral is further divided into three divisions, which is, now this is ventral, remember, and this is also lateral. So this is ventral is further divided into anterior, intermediate, and posterior. So again, let's clear. This is medial, this is anterior, this is lateral. Lateral is further divided into ventral. Ventral is further divided into anterior, intermediate, and posterior. Right? So ventro-anterior, ventro-intermediate, ventro-posterior. This all is in the lateral. Understood? So ventro-anterior, ventro-intermediate, and ventro-posterior. So ventro-postero-lateral. Lateral. Lateral word is going to come at the end. Lateral, lateral, lateral. So ventro, and so I hope you it's making sense. Ventro, entero, lateral. Does that make sense? Ventro, entero, lateral. Then you have ventro, uh, intermediate, lateral. Then you have ventro, postero, lateral. So ventro, postero, lateral, and ventro, postero, medial. Now ventro, postero, lateral, and ventro, postero, medial. Similarly, this is going to be also at the back. So there, the ventro, entero, posterior. So ventro, entero, posterior. Wait, what am I saying? Ventero, postero, lateral, and ventro, postero, medial. So ventero, postero, lateral, and then similarly at the back there'll be a ventero, postero, and medial. Now that makes sense, right? So ventero, postero, medial, and ventero, postero, lateral. These are the two groups that we have divided. Now ventero, postero, lateral, it receives information, all the sensory information, right? Remaining all. What remains behind? For example, all the information that's going upward through the ascending tracts is going to go to the ventero-posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus. I know this is so confusing and this is such a mouthful, but you need to know it. So it receives information which is going upwards by the ascending tracts. That's going to go to the ventero-posteromedial, and all the remaining is going to go to ventero-posterolateral. Now, medial lemniscus, it goes to the thalamus in the ventero-posterolateral nucleus. Ventero-posterolateral nucleus, right? So just for now, you need to know ventero-posterolateral nucleus is the main in this pathway. So again, what happens? Information comes here, right? And it's ascending. So the dorsal column, it's ascending, and any information that's coming newly, it's being added on the lateral side. This forms fasciculus gracilis, a lot of fibers here, fasciculus cuneatus, a lot of fibers here. They terminate, the first order neuron terminates at the nuclei of the gracilis and cuneatus in the lower part of the medulla oblongata. There, the second order neurons, they begin and they start decussating with the opposite side. And this decussation, these fibers here are the internal arcuate fibers. These internal arcuate fibers, they're going to go further upwards and they're going to form the medial lemniscus system. This medial lemniscus system, it's going to go to the ventero posterolateral nucleus, the ventero-posterolateral nucleus of the ventero-posterolateral nucleus of your thalamus, and it's going to go to the posterior limb, and from the posterior limb these fibers are going to fan out and they're going to go to the cerebral cortex, right? So where the posterior limb, they're going to fan out and pass into the cerebral cortex. So there we go, this is your not so complicated dorsal ascending tract system. This is also known as the medial, or you can say dorsal lemniscal system, right? The only confusing part here was the ventro-posterolateral nucleus. It's a mouthful, but you need to know. So ventral posterolateral nucleus. So ventral posterolateral nucleus. You have to recap this daily, and then you'll be able to learn at least the name of the nucleus. Rest all without revision also, I'm sure it will stay in your memory. You just need to know that the fibers are getting added laterally, right? And the medial most, the gracilis, that's carrying the information from the lower limb or lower part of the body, right? And then there's no decussation, and it like goes up, ascends ipsilaterally. Decussation occurs at nuclei level, second order neuron at the level of the medulla oblongata, and then your second order neuron terminates at the ventro-posterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, and then your order neuron goes to the posterior limb of internal capsule, and then it fans out and it goes to the cerebral cortex. So this is the third order axons. So this is your dorsal column system.